If you were to take the vital signs of Quebec right now, the monitors wouldn't just be beeping. They'd be like flashing a very specific, undeniable warning.
Oh, absolutely flashing red.
Right. And usually, when you take the vital signs of a patient, it's a clean binary process. The pulse is steady or it's not. But when that patient is an entire society, the landscape is just incredibly complex.
Yeah, it's not just a pulse. You are looking at a massive interconnected nervous system.
Exactly. A treasury, public morale, hidden scandals, foreign alliances, all pulsing at completely different rhythms. And today is Saturday, August 8th, 2026. We are looking at a manual mundane geomantic chart cast just yesterday, predicting the week commencing August 10th. Okay, let's unpack this. We are basically treating the province of Quebec itself as the querent, meaning the entity asking the question.
We are. And to get an accurate reading on a complex organism like a province, we're deploying a very traditional framework for this deep dive.
Right, going back to the roots.
Yeah, exactly. We are using Deborah Holding's mundane house meanings. That allows us to map out the collective and political sectors of the society, separating the government from the land and the treasury from the people.
So we have these distinct rooms of the province.
Right. And into those sectors, we've cast the traditional 16 geomantic figures. We'll be using their Latin names and the English glosses so you can understand the specific mechanical energy occupying each room of the province this coming week.
Perfect. So we've unrolled this massive parchment on the table, metaphorically speaking, and just scanning this map from top to bottom, the most shocking visual pattern jumps out immediately.
Oh, it's impossible to miss.
Yeah. We are looking at a triple appearance of Cauda Draconis, the tail of the dragon. And it's not like it's hidden in the background either.
No, it is right at the structural center.
It lands in House 1, the province's core identity, House 7, which is open opponents and foreign relations, and House 10, the executive government. If you're familiar with tarot, seeing that it's literally like pulling the tower card 3 times in a row. It is all about karmic closure, the exiting node, the shedding of skin.
What's fascinating here is just the sheer gravitational pull of that triple repetition, because Cauda Draconis is a mobile exiting figure. Mechanically, it deals with severance and forced release.
Force being the key word there.
Right. So having it lock down the 3 most visible pillars of a society creates what we'd call a threshold week. The province is shedding an era of governance, it's severing an external tie, and its very identity is molting.
Okay, I actually have to stop you there and push back on this idea of the threshold because...
I think it fits.
Well, it sounds a bit too polite. If a society's executive government, its core identity, and its foreign alliances are all undergoing this, like, karmic severance at the exact same time, how does that trigger a complete systemic collapse?
Yeah.
Mechanically speaking, you're pulling the load-bearing columns right out of the building.
It definitely looks that way on the surface, and that's exactly why we have to read the entire ecosystem of the chart, not just the loud parts.
Okay, fair. So what holds it up?
The counterweights. It doesn't collapse because while the vertical and horizontal pillars are shedding their skin, the foundation is heavily anchored by figures like Fortuna Major Greater Fortune and Caput Draconis, the head of the dragon.
Ah, okay, I see.
Yeah, so you are losing the old structure, yes, but the economic and survival mechanisms of the province are incredibly robust this week. The building doesn't fall, it just undergoes a very radical, very uncomfortable renovation.
Uncomfortable renovation, I like that. Let's follow that logic, because looking at the House 1 and House 7 mirror effect is just wild. House 1 is Quebec itself. House 7 is its open opponents, or the counterparties it is negotiating with.
Right, the relationship axis.
And both of them hold the tail of the dragon. So if both sides of a geopolitical or trade negotiation are simultaneously experiencing severance, exhaustion, and this forced letting go, does anyone actually win? Does anyone have the upper hand here?
From a purely mechanical standpoint, no. Neither side has an advantage, because the House 1 to House 7 axis represents a relationship in space. When both ends are anchored by Cauda Draconis, the relationship itself has just become untenable in its current form.
Wow, so it's a mutual severance.
Exactly. Whatever negotiation or conflict is happening this week, it has reached a point of absolute exhaustion. The leverage is gone on both sides, and they're both basically forced to release their grip.
That structural exhaustion, it bleeds right into the vertical axis too, houses 4 and 10. Down at the bottom, House 4 represents the physical land, the housing market, and the political opposition.
You made the foundation.
And it holds tristitia, which means sorrow. It's a heavy downward pressing figure. And then up at the very top, House 10, representing the ruling party and executive authority, holds that third cauda draconis.
Yeah, the gravity on this vertical axis is intense. And just to interject quickly, we really need to emphasize for you listening that we don't take any political sides here.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, we are completely impartial. We are not endorsing any political viewpoints from the source material. We're just purely reporting on the mechanical gravity of the chart as it exists.
Exactly, we're just reading the weather. And when you place a figure of downward sorrow like Tristitia in the foundational sector of House 4, it indicates that the land itself, or the housing infrastructure, is burdened. There are delays and heavy structural realities facing the opposition as well.
And what about the top of the chart, House 10?
Right. Meanwhile, the executive government in House 10 isn't just struggling. Cauda draconis means it is in a terminal phase of a specific cycle. It's shedding a major policy, a key leader, or an entire era of governance.
Which really makes your earlier point about survival so crucial. Because if the political and relational structures are literally molting, the survival of the province depends entirely on its material reality.
Yeah, it all comes down to the resources.
And that's where the financial axis houses 2 and 8 completely shifts the tone of this chart. House 2, the province's treasury and internal revenue, holds Fortuna Major. That is lasting success, right? A powerful inward gathering force. So the money is there.
The treasury is arguably the strongest point in the entire chart. Fortuna Major provides a deep financial bedrock. But the real mechanism of survival is actually found directly across the wheel in House 8.
The sector of shared burdens, debt, and crisis management.
Right. Because House 8 holds Caput Draconis, the head of the dragon. That's the entering node, the new beginning, the fresh opportunity.
Putting those two together, it sounds like having a massively strong savings account, but suddenly finding a brilliant new way to refinance your mortgage, specifically because a crisis forced your hand.
That is the exact mechanism at play. The head of the dragon in House 8 tells us that a tangible rescue emerges specifically through the management of a crisis. A new door opens precisely where the province handles its most pressing shared burdens.
So without the crisis, that new beginning wouldn't even activate.
Yeah.
Wow. But, a strong treasury doesn't necessarily mean the average citizen is having an easy week. The chart paints a pretty stark contrast when we look at the human cost. The 5th and 11th axis and the 6th and 12th axis.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough.
We see a double hit of amicio loss. It's a mobile figure that literally means an outflow or draining of resources. And it lands in House 5, which governs public morale and culture, and House 6, which governs public health, the civil service, and labor.
The people are basically functioning as the shock absorbers for this societal shift. Amicio in House 6 is particularly concerning because it points to an active drain on essential services. You might see a depleted health system, labor strikes that drain public resources, or civil servants just stretched totally beyond their capacity.
And that drain in House 6, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's sitting right next to House 12, the sector of hidden enemies, institutional paralysis, and scandals. And House 12 holds carcer, which literally translates to prison.
It's pure confinement. And this creates a fascinating pressure cooker dynamic. You have public services in House 6 actively hemorrhaging resources, while the systemic problems, the institutional scandals, or the root causes of that drain are locked tightly away in the 12th house.
Because of carcer.
Right. Carcer means those hidden issues cannot be resolved right now. The burdens are sealed in the dark, entirely out of the public's reach.
But if the pressure is sealed away in the 12th house, it has to leak out somewhere else.
It always does.
And we see that leakage in the media and law axis, Houses 3 and 9. House 3, which is the media, communications, and transit, holds via the way. It's pure flux, mobility, and instability.
Yeah.
The media narrative is shifting rapidly.
While the courts and universities are outright combative, House 9 holds pure, the boy.
Oh, yeah.
This is raw, martial, rash energy. When you inject pure into higher education and the legal system, you get restless campuses, aggressive litigation, and a highly volatile atmosphere for public discourse.
So the exhaustion of the government and the hidden pressures of the 12th house are manifesting as this combative youth energy in intellectual and legal spheres.
Exactly. The pressure finds the cracks.
Well, so the houses give us this incredible detailed map of where the energy is sitting. But in geomancy, the terminal figures at the bottom of the chart actually tell us the chronological story of the week.
Okay.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
It really does, because we generate the right witness, the left witness, the judge, and the reconciler to give us a complete narrative arc.
Right.
This is how we trace the temporal flow of the situation. The right witness shows us how the week originates. The left witness shows how the situation develops. The judge delivers the final verdict. And the Reconciler, which is generated by combining the judge with the reality of House 1, shows us how that verdict ultimately materializes in the real world.
So let's walk through that arc. The origin, the right witness, is Fortuna Major. The province starts the week operating from a place of great fortune, authority, and financial strength.
Right, strong start.
But then it runs into the left witness, Carcer. So the development of the week is characterized by restriction, structural delay, and being hemmed in. You have the power, but you suddenly can't move.
And because that massive energy is trapped by Carcer, it forces a very specific verdict. The judge of this chart is omissio, or loss.
Ooh.
Yeah. The final outcome of the week is a forced letting go. The structural trap demands a toll.
Which leads us to the Reconciler, the way this loss actually plays out in reality. The Reconciler here is Rubius red.
Rubius is the flashing warning light of this chart. I mean, a verdict of loss can sometimes be a quiet administrative write-off.
Sure, like a budget cut nobody notices.
Right, but not with Rubius. This figure represents heat, danger, excess, and instability. It means the verdict of omissio manifests through a volatile event, intense public passion, or a sudden, glaring red flag.
So to recap, the province starts strong, gets trapped by its own structures, is forced to pay a price of loss, and that loss is finalized through a highly visible, fiery moment.
That is the exact story of the week.
But that raises the biggest question of all. Why? When a chart has an arc that ends in a volatile red flag loss, we have to look for the root cause, right? We need to check the hidden plumbing of the chart, which means looking at the special factors.
Definitely. And the most revealing tool we have for that is the way of points. By tracing the dominant elemental line, essentially following the fire from the judge back up through the parents that generated it, we can pinpoint the exact sector that is secretly driving the entire outcome of the week.
So I traced that line of fire through the chart, and the way of points ends directly in House 7, landing right on that counted Draconis.
Which proves that the underlying fulcrum of this entire week, the reason for the structural trap, the reason for the final volatile loss, is rooted entirely in a foreign relations severance or the collapse of an external negotiation.
Wow. So that House 7 exit is literally the engine driving the volatility everywhere else.
Yes, and the motives behind this are just as revealing.
Right, because if we look at the part of spirit, which acts as the animating intention or the internal drive of the province, it falls in House 4 with Tristitia.
The sorrow figure.
Exactly. So the society's internal motivation is heavily rooted in sorrow or deep concern over the land, the housing market, or its foundational roots.
But look at where the material rescue comes from. The part of fortune, the tangible, physical benefit in the chart lands in House 8 with Draconis.
Back to the crisis management.
Exactly. It reinforces that the only way to alleviate the foundational sorrow in House 4 is to lean entirely into the crisis management of House 8.
Okay, so the geomancy gives us this stark, grounded, mechanical reality. But geomancy is an earth-based divination system. I want to know how the sky alters this reality. If we layer the astrology over this, does it change the outcome?
It adds a crucial layer of nuance through the Gerard of Cremona, or more accurately, the Gerard of Sabbioneta Astro-geomantic overlay.
Okay, what does that do exactly?
This method assigns specific zodiac signs and the traditional 7 planets to the geomantic figures, allowing us to see how planetary dignities interact with the Earth-based figures.
Wait, if we are mapping planets onto a chart that already has a triple tail of the dragon, a double loss, and a red flag finale, aren't we just piling more gravitational weight onto a heavy chart? Like, does the astrology actually offer a silver lining, or does it just confirm the severity?
This raises an important question, and it's exactly why we perform an essential dignity audit when using the Gerard overlay. We need to stress test the planets.
Okay, so what's the verdict?
We look at their placement to see if they are in detriment, fall, or domicile. And the silver lining here is massive. Not a single planet in this overlay is in detriment or fall.
Oh, wow. Really?
Really, they are functionally neutral at worst. But 2 of them are in domicile, meaning they are sitting in their home signs operating at peak strength. They act as massive, hidden pillars of resilience.
Let's give the listener the details on those pillars. Where's the first one?
The first is Jupiter in Pisces, and it lands right in House 5.
House 5. Wait, that's where we had omissio, the figure of loss draining public morale.
And this is where the overlay fundamentally alters our reading. Jupiter is expansive, protective, and benevolent. In Pisces, its home sign, it has immense power. It directly contradicts the geomantic figure of loss.
So it acts as a buffer.
Exactly. What this tells us mechanically is that while public morale and culture appear to be draining on the surface, there is an incredible philanthropic, protective energy cushioning the blow. The spirit of the people is far more resilient and philosophically grounded than the raw geomantic drain suggests.
That completely changes the whole texture of the week for the public. And the second pillar.
The moon in Cancer, situated in House 9.
House 9 is the courts, law, and universities, which held pure that aggressive, martial, combative energy.
Right. And with the moon in its domicile here, joined by the sun, it takes that combative intellectual energy and gives it massive public and emotional resonance.
Because the moon represents the public instinct.
Exactly. Its strength here means that the people are heavily invested in these legal and academic battles. They aren't just watching from the sidelines. The public has a powerful, instinctual voice in matters of law and doctrine this week.
But the overlay also adds some sharp edges elsewhere, right? I see Scorpio rising, which turns the House 1 identity shift into an intense fixed transformation.
Yes.
We have Mars in Leo in House 10, meaning the government's counter-draconis phase isn't just a quiet resignation. It's a forceful, proud, combative exit.
Oh, very combative.
And we have Saturn in Sagittarius in House 2, which puts a structural restrictive boundary around that otherwise wealthy Fortuna major treasury.
The Gerard overlay shows us that the mechanics of the Earth chart are highly complex. The government's forceful exit and the strict boundaries around the treasury are completely balanced by the profound resilience of the public spirit and their active engagement in the legal sphere.
So we've unrolled the map, traced the plumbing, and layered the stars over the Earth. It is time to synthesize all this into a cohesive forecast.
Let's do it.
If we take all of these moving parts and distill them into the sharpest possible verdict for Quebec for the week of August 10, 2026, it is this. Quebec enters the week with its treasury heavily fortified, but exits it having paid a structural price it did not choose to pay. The triple tail of the dragon demands that the province's identity, its foreign ties, and its government all shed their old skin, and that final loss will manifest with the sudden volatility of a red flag.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this synthesis is the exact definition of a threshold crossing.
How so?
Well, a crisis destroys a foundation. A threshold simply demands a toll. The province is forced to evolve, but it possesses the tools required to survive the crossing. A strong treasury in House 2, the hidden resilience of Jupiter in House 5, and the brilliant opportunity for debt restructuring in House 8.
I see. It's like standing at a doorway that is structurally just a bit too narrow for all the luggage you're carrying. You aren't failing to cross the threshold, but you physically cannot take the old versions of yourself through the door.
Beautifully put.
You have to drop the old alliances, the old political structures, and the old identity at the frame before you can step through.
And dropping that luggage is exactly what the triple cauda draconis represents.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and you're living in Quebec, doing business there, or analyzing its geopolitical moves this week, how do you practically navigate this map?
The most actionable strategy this chart provides is to accept the structural endings. The severance in House 7 Foreign Relations and House 10 Government is mechanically locked in. You cannot outmaneuver it.
Don't fight the gravity.
Right. Instead, pivot your focus to House 8. The hidden opportunity of the week emerges specifically through managing debt, shared burdens, or crisis fallout. Rely on the financial bedrock of the Treasury and the inherent resilience of the community.
And what about that red flag at the end?
Be acutely aware that the Reconciler is Rubeus. When the final shedding occurs, it will likely come with a flash of danger, passion, or public volatility. When you see that red flag, recognize it as the culmination of the week's structural shift, not the beginning of a new disaster.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Building on the mechanics we've explored today, the chart shows Quebec shedding major load-bearing structures everywhere. Its core identity, its external relationships, the highest levels of its executive branch.
Yeah, shedding everywhere.
But think back to House 12, Carcer, the prison holding the institutional scandals, the deep structural pressures safely locked away from the public. If the entire society is undergoing a radical shedding of its structures, what happens to the very walls holding back House 12?
Oh, wow.
When a society sheds its skin, do its deepest, most confined secrets spill out onto the floor as well?
That is a deeply unsettling, yet completely mechanically logical question to carry forward.
Keep your eyes on House 7 and those foreign negotiations as the threshold approaches. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We set out to take the vital signs of a complex society, and we found an organism that is forcibly transforming right before our eyes. We'll see you next time.